Welcome into the Toronto Sports Rush right here on the Bet Rivers Network. Remember, like and subscribe. We got a lot of great content for you right here on the Toronto Sports Rush. And today we have my friend and colleague, the former NHL goaltender, Kevin Weeks. You can see him on ESPN. You can see him on NHL Network. You can see him in an isolated location. I have no idea where you are right now. You look like you've been incarcerated. Are you okay?
I am okay. I'm looking for the guard, but the guard's not here to let me out. so I might have to do a little bit of hard time in here. I'm in our hyperbaric chamber at the house here in Jersey.
Okay.
Getting some oxygen therapy. I might even put one of these on, get a little extra oxygen coming in from time to time if you see it. Recovery, regeneration. Hey, did you know these playoffs are wood chipper? You know that.
That's right.
We're on the air 8,000 times a day.
Even the broadcasters takes a toll.
You got that right. It does. Yeah. Life doesn't wait. Family life doesn't wait.
No, and, you have a lot going on. You have a lot going on. All right, let's get to it. Let's get to the Leafs. They have a lot going on right now as well, and I want to start with the Auston Matthews. I don't know if it really wasn't a visit; it was a conversation that was had, apparently, by all reports. John Shaika, Matt Sundin engaged in a, I guess, somewhat lengthy Zoom call with Auston Matthews, who lives in Arizona. Those guys are in the Toronto area. Like, first of all, I know it's busy for these guys right now. There's scouting meetings. There's a lot to do. He's just come into the job. What do you make of a Zoom meeting as opposed to making that trip and going face-to-face, which they eventually will do?
So basically, it's like saying you want to propose to your future partner. Heaven forbid you're not away for work. More importantly, you're not deployed. You're not a member of the active military or on some type of major diplomatic mission.
Yeah.
You're on the same continent. Yeah. But I want to propose just kind of what my future plans are. Maybe, you can take my hand. I can take your hand. We could do this thing. But I'm going to do it on Zoom. What? What?
So I'm taking you don't like it. You don't like the Zoom idea.
I'm going to do it on FaceTime. I'm going to do it on Zoom.
Yeah.
I don't. Okay, listen. I don't know all the details around it.
Yeah.
Truth be told, full disclosure. However, I don't know if it was an attempt by the Toronto Maple Leafs to fire up the jet, get to the Jet Center at Pearson, fire the jet up. Make sure you have a Leaf logo decal on the tail. Air Canada, okay, that's fine. Toronto Maple Leafs logo, original 6 on the tail, and that should have flown into Scottsdale. Auston, your sisters, mom and dad, Mr. and Mrs. Matthews, what do you like? What would you like tonight? What do you like? What's your spot? You want sushi tonight in Scottsdale? We got it, no problem. We'll take you there. Would you prefer to get steak? You want surf and turf? You want Mexican? You want Italian? What do you want? Like, I don't know. To me, I was kind of floored by that yesterday, that it was only a Zoom. And again, I don't know at whose decision it was for it to land on a Zoom meeting only.
Yeah.
But to me, you're trying to convince and sell. You're trying to sell your all-time leading goal scorer in the history of an original 6 franchise. What you're doing, what's the plan, what's the program, the path, each these things you and I talk about, the key franchise values now and going forward, what it's going to look like. I don't think that Zoom is the way to do that. So I was kind of shocked when I heard it.
It seemed like, again, by all reports, that things went fine and that Auston Matthews is, eager to see what the next moves are, but feels comfortable with things as of now. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, he's got 2 years left. I think the proof will be in the pudding. I mean, if they play this season and you go through the halfway point of the year and it's a struggle, and it very well could be when you think of that division, how loaded it is right now, that might really be the determining factor in where this goes from here, as opposed to kind words that are said, whether in person or over Zoom in May, when your team hasn't been playing for almost 2 months.
Well, let me put it to you this way, and those are great points. I go back to last off season. I did the college hockey regionals last year, and Penn State had that great run. And I remember talking to Guy Godowski, good chat with him. And I remember hearing from some family up in Alberta that there was a chance, and Whitehorse, by the way, because that's where McKenna's from, even though he played in Medicine Hat in Alberta. I remember hearing that there was a good chance he was going to leave and go to Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you think Penn State would just wooing him on FaceTime or on WhatsApp? Each, come on now. You know what you think they're just saying, hey, let's just WhatsApp each other. We'll see. So, anyways, I look at it this way, and I've said this to clubs. I think that right now more than ever, it is a player-first league. The players are more empowered than they've been before.
Yeah.
And with that, these players all talk. Hey, what's your experience like in Dallas? Here's what we get. What's your experience like down in South Florida? Woo, here's what we're getting. Yeah. What about in Tampa? Woo, here's how they're treating us. You know, that's the way things go, for better or for worse. And with that, you need to sell your program. Yes, it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yes, he's been there. However, it's a different version. There's a lot of turnover. There's a new ownership structure. There's a new managerial structure. Unknown as what the new coaching structure is going to be like. How do you sell us on the program? You have to sell players and staff on what that looks like, almost like a college program. I've been saying that, and you went to Michigan State each. You went with your son a couple years ago.
Yeah,
you came back raving about it, right?
Yeah, yep.
You
it's a great setup they have there for everything, really, but for hockey in particular, because these Big Ten schools in particular, and some other schools as well, that belong to conferences, they just have a lot of resources, and they can put together a workout facility that is really second to none. And that's what I saw at Michigan State, and you see it at all these places. So, I mean, certainly it would be better than a circumstance at a junior program or an American Hockey League team, and I dare say maybe better than some of the NHL teams. So
for sure,
there's a lot of resources.
Yeah, you got to sell the program. So to me, I look at that like any good program, whether it's at Michigan State, at Munn, Ice Arena there, the setup, University of Michigan, at Yost, whether you're talking my guy Jay Pandolfo, my former teammate, and BU, any of these, Dane Jackson, I played with at Nodak, North Dakota.
Yeah.
I think the NHL and pro sports in general, a lot of the other sports are doing a very good job of that, where they're selling. Let's sell the program. Let's sell the amenities. Let's sell the resources. Let's sell the plan. And I'm not saying that the Leafs haven't or won't do that, but you can only do that so well on Zoom for the initial. And I was kind of shocked by that.
All right, let me ask you about, speaking, you're talking about people talk to one another and the connection with the players. Auston has a friend that's currently still playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs that he was a teammate with for many years, in Mitch Marner, and it's gone really well for the Vegas Golden Knights and Mitch Marner as they're on the precipice of going to the Cup final and maybe winning the Stanley Cup this year. What did you make of Mitch's comments the other night after the game when he was asked about the team trailing in the game? And I believe he said something to the effect of, we're a veteran group. We don't turn on each other. We stay the course and we figure things out. It sounded like that was kind of a callback to that incident on the bench when him and Nylander got into a little back and forth on the bench. I think Nylander said something along the lines of, "This isn't junior hockey, bro," or something along those lines. But what did you make of that from Marner? Did you see that as a little shot, or nothing? Are we making too much of it?
I say it was a 50-50. I say it might have been a little tweak, just a little acupuncture needle. Yeah. That's what I think it may have been. And keep in mind, even though he's playing in Vegas, and I've been around their team a lot, done a lot of their games in the regular season, a ton of them in the postseason. I've seen it. I talked to his agent, Darren Ferris, yesterday. And Darren's a Toronto guy as well as and more importantly, as is Mitch. But even though he's in Vegas, he still hears from his buddies what everybody's saying in TO. He still hears what a lot of people are saying. And somebody like Jeff O'Neill, who I've known a long time and played with in Carolina and respect a lot, O-Dog went to bat for him, which I thought was really cool and really fair and accurate, because you're getting a lot of misplaced anger and people are saying things, and even some members of the media and different people of influence are saying things as well that have been a little over the line and a little petty, a little bit of a jilted ex kind of, and not, that has that kind of flavor to it, as opposed to, hey man, this guy was third all-time points per game, point percentage here. He set franchise records. He's a Toronto kid. He played here. He wore the blue and white. He idolized Doug Gilmour, which is why he wore 93 in London. He didn't wear it in Toronto for obvious reasons. Why he's wearing it again in Vegas.
Yeah.
And we're so happy to see him have success. So I think he kind of got a little bit tired of a lot of the comments that were directed at him. And yeah, I think that may have been a little bit tongue in cheek, as if to say, hey, you know what? We don't turn on each other. We are, a veteran team. We bent, but we didn't break. And we're in a really good spot. And he is in a great spot. Folks, I got to tell you something, Each. I'm being tight right now. Let me unwind a little bit.
Yeah, come on.
He's leading the Stanley Cup playoffs in points, people.
Yeah.
He's leading the Stanley Cup playoffs in points. If you're a Leafs fan and you're walking around Yorkdale Mall or Scarborough Town Center or Markville Town Center, you're just up in Markham doing the U18s. So you spent some time up there. Hey, all you can do is tip your hat to what him and his teammates are doing. He's been absolutely incredible within the flow of their team.
Yeah.
And he's playing an honest brand. There's no cheating on pucks or position or on assignments. It's all within the flow of the game. It's been impressive to watch.
Yeah, listen, he's always been an excellent player. He was a high draft pick. He lived up to those expectations, certainly in the regular season. In the playoffs, there were challenges. There were challenges for everybody who was on the Leafs over these last bunch of years in the postseason. And I would just say, again, for someone like Marner, I'm not surprised he's doing well in Vegas because he is supported by a much better group around him, and he just gets to be one piece of the puzzle. I mean, their defense they have there, led by Theodore and Hannafin and Anderson. And by the way, Rasmus Anderson is an unrestricted free agent, so we could be talking about him more, moved down the road. I know he was certainly someone that the previous administration in Toronto tried to acquire through trade and would probably be looking to acquire as a free agent. Of course, we'll see what John Scheika decides to do going forward to help rebuild that D, but they didn't have anything like that in Toronto. They've had very inconsistent goaltending in Toronto during that whole time. So he's in a great spot right now, and it's just a good fit. He's playing really well, so nobody really should be all that surprised at that. But we'll see where it goes with Mighty Mitch and the Vegas Golden Knights. You got one more?
I got one more. There's a little bit of a precedent here.
Yeah.
And people seem to conveniently forget my man Phil Kessel, that was excellent as a Toronto Maple Leaf.
Yeah.
And years where they weren't really a good team.
Yeah.
That filled the net, that filled the score sheet, that wanted to stay in Toronto, that signed an extension, that wanted to be there. And same thing in a sense where, there's a lot of noise about him. And finally, and I remember when Jimmy Rutherford traded for him and I played for Jimmy, I called Jimmy Rutherford. I was like, Jimmy, I love that trade. He's like, you do? My staff doesn't like it. My staff doesn't like it. I'm like, really? He goes, I was the only one in the room that wanted the trade. And I got to tell you, if you folks remember, Phil Kessel went on to not only win one cup with Pittsburgh, but two. And his HBK line had 65 points that one year, his line with him, Bonino, and Carl Hagelin. And he played exceptionally well. Then he went on to win a third one in Vegas. And I remember saying to Phil after the first one, like, Phil, if you win this thing, you might bring it back to TO, downtown Yonge Street, the longest street in the world. You might bring the Stanley Cup. And you know what he did? He brought the Stanley Cup down Yonge Street. He brought it over to Sick Children's Hospital where my mom worked at the time.
Nice.
And did some hospital visits with the families and the kids, some of the patients and the staff there. And the rest is history. So curious to see. Mitch always has his big charitable event in his foundation in Toronto. Curious to see if they win. What he does and where he brings it back in the GTA for you fans that are tuning in.
Yeah, that would be I guess that would be the cherry on top of the Sunday. I guess we'll see how it plays out. And I will say again, that's a good comparison in the fact that I think both Mitch Marner and Phil Kessel are what I like to always call complementary pieces. They're not the spine necessarily of a championship team, but they're really important complementary pieces. I used to say that about Brett Hull when he was in Dallas all those years ago when the Stars acquired him. They had Nieuwendyk, they had Madonna through the middle, they had Hatch, they had Belfour in goal. They had a lot of pieces, and they had a great complementary piece they acquired in Brett Hull. They went on to win a Stanley Cup. Brett, of course, went on to Detroit and won a Stanley Cup there as well. So, those are important players, and when you can surround them and put that alongside a really strong spine of a team, now all of a sudden you got something. So they're getting that done out in Vegas. Let me ask you, change the topic, going back to Toronto here with their current team. Bad
Sure.
news about Max Domi. Like he
Yeah.
has a surgery. There were complications, and it looks like he's going to be on the shelf for a while. What did you make of that?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Really scary too. Like I've known
Yeah.
Max. Pardon me. Obviously, I played against his dad, Ty, and
Mm-hmm.
ironically, I don't think a lot of people would know this, but we lived about 5 minutes from each other in North York and Toronto and Bayview area,
Mm-hmm.
and so I've known Max since he was a kid and would see him around. And keep in mind, he has, I think he's diabetic if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Yeah.
So it's incredible that he's able to play at such a high level at the NHL level. Even
Yeah.
with that, I know there have been other instances, Bobby Clark, the great Bobby Clark,
Yeah.
among others, that had it, that were diabetic. But that's a lot to manage when you're playing with your
Mm-hmm.
blood sugar, with the demands of the travel and the grind and the workouts and the games and the pressure. So I don't know exactly what the nature of this was, and I don't know if that would make him a little bit more compromised based on the fact that he was diabetic. But all I do know is it was pretty scary to see that statement. So we
Yeah.
hope that he makes a full and complete recovery. As we always say, we root for the health and safety of all the players, and hopefully he's in a better place now post surgery and got the corrective surgery, and there's a path to him healing as a person and hopefully as a player as well.
Yeah, it's you went through a surgical issue where you had complications
Oh
you
my
had to
God.
go through with your knee, just not like a couple I guess a year,
Yes.
2 years ago now.
Yes.
It's a little scary for an individual to deal with that, especially a guy that's still playing in the National Hockey League. Like it could be career ending when you have an issue like that.
Of course. It's exactly right. Your body is basically like a Formula One car, really,
Mhm.
and you're the driver in essence. When you're a pro athlete, that's not a Formula One driver, but it's
Mhm.
everything, the tools of the trade, from your skate sharpening to the way they're pitched, to maybe you need orthotics, maybe you don't, maybe you have a pre-existing back issue, you play with a brace, maybe you have a knee injury that you're playing through. There's so many different ailments that I know that I played through, and different guys that I played with or against played through. It's very seldom that you're like, "Oh, I feel amazing. I feel 1,000% today." So when you have an injury and you're playing through something or an illness or both, and you end up having to get a surgery, let alone a corrective surgery, in the pre-op, in the pre-surgical consultation, the surgeon or the team, orthos and everything, they'll talk to you. They'll say, well, this is this and this is that. You go through the pre-surgical plan. But you're right, Each. I got news for you. When you come out of there, let me share a story with the viewers. So I remember I was playing, maybe see that there.
Mhm.
So I was playing with a ruptured bicep tendon,
Okay.
and it happened over time, but I really felt it my first year here in Jersey with the Devils. And I remember I'd go into our trainer who's now with Buffalo, Richie Matthew. I'd be, Richie, there's something wrong with my glove arm. I don't know.
Yeah.
It feels painful. It's really achy. It's really painful. It's hurting. We do a couple different treatment protocols or whatever. And at the end of the season, we went to our physical at the Prudential Center, and I said, Richie, my arm, I'm telling you, there's something. So we go get an MRI. We get the MRI. It shows that my bicep tendon was 95% torn off the bone.
Hmm.
Now, this is my glove. This is my catching hand.
Yeah, that's your moneymaker.
That's not ideal to hear. So
Yeah.
now I go through the surgery. I get the surgery done here in Jersey. And I remember coming out, and I've got this cast and all this gauze and everything. And the surgeon is touching my fingers. He goes, can you feel me touching your fingers? I go, no. He goes, well,
Yeah.
maybe the pain block is still in there. Let's see tomorrow. And then after he's like, can you feel me touching your fingers? I go, no. They thought they were going to have to go back in. He goes, if I have to go back in, you may not be able to ever open and close your hand again and
Oh,
open and close your glove.
God.
So within 24 hours, if you can't do this motion, which you have to do for a catching glove,
Yeah.
your career could be over because I may have touched your radial nerve.
Wow.
That's how scary a lot of these things
Yeah.
are.
Wow.
So I just wanted to share that with the viewers based on your question. But
Yeah.
hopefully for Max, he can make a full and complete recovery.
Wow. Well, we're rooting for Max, and hopefully he's going to
Yeah.
be okay. Just another kind of issue for the Leafs to deal with. They've had just so
Mhm.
many things going on over the last, I mean, I guess forever. The Leafs always seem to have things
Yeah.
happening. Let me ask you about who the next coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs might be, because obviously Craig Berube is out. There was some talk about David Carl, the coach at
Mhm.
the University of Denver. Some conversations. I will be Weeksy. I don't know if I'll be more shocked about anything that happens in the league
Yeah.
if David Carl ends up as the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, just because I've talked to David a number of different times over the years. I was doing the broadcast for the World Juniors and interaction with
U18s,
David
you do
all
the
the time.
U18s too?
Yeah, but I mean, I just had a lot of interaction with him, and just from a business standpoint. And listen, David is really, really sharp. He's got a young family, lives in Denver. He's got a great program there at the University of Denver. They just won another national title. I just don't think if I think he'll eventually want to try coaching of the National Hockey League. But talking to him, he was very much going to be on his terms.
Right.
And I don't know, you look at the roster, what the Leafs have right now, especially on defense and in goal, where they've had some injury issues there.
Yes.
I don't think this is the job that he's going to leave Denver for. So we'll see. But I will be really surprised. Can you think of any other candidates, Weeksy, that could be a good fit? I mean, Bruce Cassidy is out there. If they ever let him talk to anybody in Vegas, and Chris Knobloch is available now. I mean, he might be an interesting guy here that fits with John Shaika and Matt Sundin. What are you thinking about the next coach?
Yeah, I think those are two really good names. I think if Bruce Cassidy's an Ontario guy, he's from Ottawa, going to be a huge opportunity for him to coach the Toronto Maple Leafs. I just don't know if the team where they are now, based on the roster right this second, to your point, as you laid out, the roster has some challenges. Is that a challenge that he wants to take on right now? Having run a great program in Boston, having run a great program in Vegas, helping Vegas win the Stanley Cup. I don't know at this juncture of his career if that's a fit for him. Here's another name that you just mentioned, and Knobloch did a great job up in Edmonton. Okay, been to 2 Stanley Cup final, but same thing. He just came from a team that had a lot of success. Now, he did coach in the OHL, pardon me, even though he coached in Alberta in the NHL, but he coached in the OHL in Erie, coached Connor McDavid, Connor Brown, and others there. Could he be a fit? Same thing. I don't know where the team is. Peter Laviolette is back around. I played for Labby. He's doing the rounds, excuse me. He could be a name that draws some interest. But again, he won a Stanley Cup. He's been to 3 Stanley Cups. Is that team where he wants them to be? I'm not sure. But I will say this, 2 guys that I know very well, I played against a long time. I grew up playing against in Toronto since I was 8, and Jay Woodcroft and Manny Malhotra, respectively.
Yeah.
And now we'll start with Jay. Jay, obviously, is a Toronto kid. They both are. But Jay coached in Edmonton. He came through the minors. He was in San Jose for years. He was in Detroit for years. He was under Todd McClellan, a part of that staff. He knows Pete DeBoer. He has a wealth of experience. Did a very good job in Edmonton. Worked in their AHL team. Helped develop a lot of those young guys like Bouchard and others. I think that would be a real intriguing fit for them because he's young enough but old enough. He can relate to today's players. He's had a lot of different experience. Manny Malhotra, who I also think did an amazing job last year winning the AHL Calder Cup, developing some of those kids in Van, played a long time. His son Caleb's going to be a top 5 pick this upcoming draft. But Manny could be a really intriguing hire as well, just based on all of his experience as a player, as an assistant, of course, then American League Calder Cup last year. And he knows a lot of the young players because his son has played with and against a lot of these young players, both in the U.S. and Canada. So I think those 2 guys for me are very intriguing as some of the younger, if you will, candidates in addition to David Carl. But I think a lot of it's going to be dependent on what the roster looks like. Like, what does this roster look like, which could help determine who the coach is going to be. But those are some names that come to mind for me.
When do you think they're going to what's the timeline, you think? I mean, because we got we have the playoffs going on right now. The Leafs have that first overall pick. They won the lottery. That's going to take place in late June in Buffalo. You won't be able to do anything to your roster with free agents until after July 1. And you think about, for me, job one is to fix the defense. I was going through last night, like Rasmus Anderson is a unrestricted. I mean, Mario Ferraro in San Jose is another guy who's relatively young, 27. Not necessarily a great skater, but someone that's available. Darren Radish is probably the biggest name.
Toronto
he could shoot the puck right through the wall here. And I mean, he could be somebody that could really help their power play. Now, he's only had really the one big year and 2 years where he's been really a regular NHLer. Is he going to leave Tampa? Is he going to want a lot of money? I mean, but I do think, again, he has a skill that is unique in his shot that might be worthwhile for the Leafs. You can imagine, him up top would be able to move that puck back and forth to Matthews or Nylander and maybe able to unleash that shot from at the top. I mean, that could be a valuable asset. So there's another guy. I mean, you go through the list, and then after that, there's just not a ton of guys. There's really just like marginal guys like the kid Ryan Shea, who had a pretty good year in Pittsburgh. He'd be one. Blankenberg, who's in Colorado right now, is kind of a 5, 6, 7, 8 guy there. I mean, he's a good skater, but he's small. I mean, these are the guys. They're going to have to take chances on somebody or some people because they've got to get that blue line younger and faster.
You're right. And I think a lot of it, too, will come down to what the plan is. Like, to me, I think you and I have talked about this, Eej. If I were the Toronto Maple Leafs, it was my plan. I see one path, really, to give us the best chance of where we want to go. And that's just try to load up for within the next year to 2 years as best you can. Now, remember, I discussed this with you in the CAF at the NHL Network.
Yeah.
In the interim, I like some of those guys that you mentioned because you can have, you can get them in the interim to kind of improve your defense. But in the not too distant future, Quinn Hughes will be available if he doesn't sign an extension there.
Yeah.
Zach Werenski will be available if he doesn't sign an extension there.
Yeah.
Bo Byram could be available. Like you start going around, and that's on the D. They're not limited. Yeah. Ristolainen, you and I talked about, especially after the Olympics when we were doing our showcase games. Ristolainen, if you get 1, 2, any of those guys, that could help change your team for sure. But then keep in mind, we got to look at the relationships. Like Auston Matthews is represented by Judd. You and I talked about him yesterday.
Yeah.
So too's Connor. Yeah. So too is Zach Werenski.
Yeah.
Like you could start going around the horn. It's all about relationships. And to me, then you also have Steven Stamkos, who's got 2 more years left on his deal.
Mm-hmm.
You got Ryan O'Reilly, 1 more year left on his deal.
Yeah.
You got AJ Greer as a depth piece in Florida, who's won a Stanley Cup.
Mm-hmm. You're suggesting that perhaps if you leave yourself room, and the cap is going up, you leave yourself room that you might be able to create an NBA type situation where guys kind of come together to play together. We've seen it a couple times in the NHL with smaller groups, only of 2 really. I could think of Korea and Solane years ago, and then Parisi and Suter, in Minnesota. So there is some precedent for it, but not. I think that you're talking about a grander scale, which would be, I'm sure, just wonderful news for Leafs fans if that could be pulled off. But it's a lot of pieces.
It's a lot of pieces, and you don't know how the pieces are going to mesh.
Yeah.
But one thing I do know is right now they do have the first overall selection, which is huge. But in general, they don't have a lot of draft capital. They don't have a lot of prospect capital. So you have Matthew
really
Nyes,
low.
Really low. You have Matthew Nyes, who's there, who's a good young player, has a chance to be a really, really good young player with his size and strength and speed. You've got Easton Cowan as a young player out of London who played in the OHL. Cowboy is his nickname. So there's a couple guys that you have. I got to tell you, too, I like that goalie Akhtiamov, who plays for my guy John Gruden down in the American League with the Marlies. I had his game out in Long Island against the Islanders in his debut. I think there's some talent there, but there's not a lot of young pieces in the group that you can point to and say, this prospect, that prospect, this prospect. So to me, the path is very tricky with them. And with it being tricky, I think you have to, in a grander scheme of things, again, if you want to retain Auston, how about we bring Connor here? How about we try to bring Connor? How about we try to bring Zach? You want a gold medal with him? Why don't we try to bring Quinn? They lived in Toronto for years. The Hughes family. So anyway, just thinking, big, grand. We like to swing for the fences.
That's
swing for the fences.
That's a big swing.
Yeah,
that is a big swing. Well, listen, with that, Weeksy, I'll let you get your oxygen there in the chamber. Relax. There you go. A little extra H2O for you.
Yes.
Thanks for the time today, my friend. I appreciate
it. Anytime, you know that. Anytime. Right. Pleasure.
All right. There he is. The great Kevin Weeks. Again, you see him on you see him on ESPN, you see him on the NHL Network, you see him even in a hyperbaric chamber in his home. You never know where you're going to see him. Kevin Weeks, thanks for the time. You've been watching the Toronto Sports Rush right here on the Bet Rivers Network. Remember, like, subscribe. Maybe we can see Kevin again at some point. We will see.
Of course.
Wixie, take care, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Vince. Thanks for tuning in.